Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. I decided that I'm going to be doing reviews for the Underworld series. I haven't seen the Underworld movies for a long time now. The last one came out in 2016 and I've not seen any of them since then. In fact, I've only seen the first movie more than once and the rest of them I had only seen once before re-reviewing or re-watching the movies for the reviews. So the first one was the only one I could really remember fully. And one thing I remember about not just the first Underworld, but all of the Underworld movies was I absolutely loved Kate Beckinsale growing up. I was 19 when I first watched Underworld, so as you can understand, I just fell in love with Kate Beckinsale and the character of Selene. And when you look back, I'll talk about this throughout the series, but when you look back on strong female characters, I think that Selene is one that goes over everyone's heads. They always forget about Selene because she, especially in the first one so far, is an absolute badass. This one came out in 2003, so this was 5 years before Twilight. This was vampires versus werewolves, but only in this instance it's vampires versus Lycans, aka lycanthropes, which are a form of werewolves. And I think what I love about films like this is it's not just vampires versus werewolves. They go into a bit of a backstory and a lore behind not just vampires and werewolves, but their version of these vampires and werewolves, because I think all different movies are different. You know, like there's vampires in films that are not allergic to garlic. There's vampires in films like Twilight that can go out in the sun. But in this one, it seems to be the more traditional vampire in this one, as well as the werewolves as well. They turn on the full moon, they can die with silver bullets, only in this instance like silver nitrate with the goo that comes out of the bullets. So it's very traditional and that's what I like. I also like the idea that these vampires and Lycans have been at battle and war for hundreds of years in the underground, not physically underground, or although sometimes they are, but they've been fighting with each other for years, even with normal humans like us roaming the earth, so that people go about their everyday business, and these vampires and Lycans are fighting each other in broad daylight or broad nightlight and just in front of humans, but the humans don't really understand what's happening. It's only what's happening between the vampires and Lycans that understand. We've got Michael Corvin in this storyline, who is a descendant of the Corvinus family, which consists of, for all we know, Marcus and William. Although William's not mentioned in the first one, it's only really Marcus that's mentioned. The two elders in this movie are Victor and Marcus, who are vampires who have to sleep every couple of 100 years, and one of them comes up at a time so that they can rule the vampire world. But you've also got the head honcho, Craven, who is their next in command. He watches over them when they're sleeping, but Craven wants to take over, so he has a plan to get both of them killed, and he needs the help from Lucian and the other Lycans. Lucian is the head Lycan, the head werewolf, who is going to stop them from doing that. But we don't know how it started or why they're doing what they're doing. Initially, we think that Lucian is a really bad guy, but throughout the story we find out that Lucian's only doing things because of what happened to him. He was a slave, and we find out that the Lycans were just basically watching over the vampires. They were like their guard dogs. But Lucian, being a werewolf, and Sonia, who was the daughter of Victor, the head vampire, she is a vampire. So the both of them loved each other. It's like a Romeo and Juliet story where they loved each other but they shouldn't be together. The Montagues and the Capulets, only this version is vampires and Lycans. Victor obviously doesn't like that, and he finds out that Sonia's pregnant with Lucian's baby. So he has to kill Sonia, and Lucian is now a slave forever and he's banished and he gets away. So after all those years, Lucian wants to get revenge on Victor, but Lucian finds out that Victor has a daughter called Selene. But Selene is not the actual daughter of Victor. He only picks her up from a village, and again, Selene has a backstory. She finds out that her family were slaughtered and Victor took her in, but as the story progresses, we find out that Victor actually slaughtered Selene's family and just took in Selene. So there's so much more depth to this story than I've initially remembered. As I was watching it, I was more interested in the story than I was in all the action that was happening. Some of the action was good, but watching it after over 20 years, it's been 21 years this year, watching the action in the film, I thought is a little dated. I think the choreography was a little cheesy, and I think there was too much slow motion. I love a bit of slow-mo, I love Michael Bay slow-mo, but in this film, there was too much slow-mo, and there was times where it wasn't even required, where they were just doing something that didn't require slow-mo, but they'd done it anyway, and I'm like, if you stopped all the slow-mo, the film wouldn't be 2 hours and 13 minutes long, it'd probably be 2 hours long. So some of the scenes were a little cheesy and very dated. The main story is with Michael and Selene, because Michael and Selene are your modern day Sonia and Lucian realises that because he looks at them thinking, right, there's this guy who is a descendant of the Corvinus family and Selene who's a vampire, but Michael, because he's a Corvinus family member, he could be bitten by a vampire and be bitten by a werewolf and survive. And that's what happens in this film. He's bitten by both, so he becomes a hybrid. All of that sounds interesting with Michael, but if I'm being honest, I think Michael is the least entertaining part of this movie. I don't know if it's because of Scott Speedman's acting or it's just the way the character was written, but you would think a vampire slash werewolf would be the most interesting aspect, but it's not. He's boring all the way through the movie, and then when he becomes his hybrid self, the look of the hybrid werewolf slash vampire doesn't do anything for me either. He's not aesthetically pleasing. He's just very boring. He's a boring character. When I think back of Underworld, when I was watching it again, I was like, I remember most of the things that happened, but I completely forgot about what happens to Michael throughout the movie because he is the most forgettable part of this film. Like I said, I think the story was the strongest part of this movie, and what I really liked about it was they tiptoed around Selene's backstory. Now we find out more about Selene as the movies go on, but I like that they tiptoed around it, giving us just enough, giving the audience just enough to go, I wonder what happened there. Oh, I wonder if Craven's telling the truth about what Victor done to Selene's family. So it gives you a little bit of gives you some nuggets all the way through the movie for you to go, I want to know more. Overall though, guys, I still thoroughly enjoyed the film. I think, like I said, the best aspect was the storyline. I absolutely love Kate Beckinsale, and I love the fight between vampires and Lycans. But I think what doesn't age well is the choreography, with the fight scenes and the slow motion. The CGI wasn't terrible. It was 20 years old. The CGI still held up at times. But the worst part for me was Michael. I think the hybrid idea was great, but the execution for the hybrid and Michael just didn't work for me. But overall, I still really enjoyed Underworld. So what are your thoughts on the very first Underworld movie, guys? Do you still like it? Or did you like it back in the day? And do you think it holds up after over 20 years? Leave your comments down below, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat?
Someone's in the back!